It's a beautiful day in this galaxy, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty world, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a star family just like you. I've always wanted to live in a solar system with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my star family? Hey, star family. My name's Christopher Anatra. You know me as the quantum businessman. Get ready to have your consciousness super expanded and your mind blown. Welcome to my first International Mandela Effect Conference of 2020 presentation titled Moon Angel, a Father's Day Mandela Effect Message. What, did you think I was going to wear that orange jumpsuit the whole time? Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. As you can tell, this dad is sometimes a little goofy, but it's all with good fun, sometimes to the embarrassment of my children. Sorry, kids. The theme of this conference is Revelations of the Mandela Effect. What does the word revelation mean? An act of revealing or communicating divine truth, enlightening or astonishing or shocking disclosure. In Greek, it's known as the apocalypse. It is the unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known and which could not be known apart from the unveiling, the end of the old, the beginning of the new. For myself, this perfectly describes the Mandela Effect. I'm very happy to be part of the International Mandela Effect Conference community, a community with a passion to share positive, transformative information about the Mandela Effect. We are artists, authors, visionaries, and business people of a quantum nature, dedicated to validating people's experiences with the Mandela Effect. It's a brave organization being supported by outspoken, courageous individuals who do not accept we are misremembering or confabulating along with tens of millions of others. Our first conference, held in the hard-to-get area of the United States in Ketchum, Idaho, in November of 2019, was attended by a few brave souls in audience, as most new organizations experience. I think we could have all fit into my pickup truck. Quality over quantity. We all made some amazing friendships as we shared our stories and had some good laughter along the way. Since then, the phenomena of the Mandela Effect continues to grow as it captures the imagination of so many. And, hand in hand, so does our organization of the International Mandela Effect Conference grow. This might be your first time in experiencing a conference about the Mandela Effect. We understand that the Mandela Effect is exposing both how our consciousness works and its connection to the possibilities of quantum physics and a higher consciousness. Secret information that is now being revealed as revelations to our reality. Do you agree? If you do, join us and support us. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the president and CEO of a computer software technology company named NECS Incorporated. Did you think I was someone else? For over 25 years, my company has been creating software for the unique needs of food distribution companies, the businesses that get food to your local restaurant, grocery store, and school. In July of 2019, I became the first company CEO to speak out about the Mandela Effect and how it was affecting my clients' business. So what did I do? I made a video about it. For example, is it a software bug if your Stouffer's stovetop stuffing doesn't exist anymore in your inventory system? Or might it mean you've slipped into a new timeline in a parallel universe where Stouffer's stovetop stuffing never existed? In this timeline, it's always been Kraft. There wasn't any buyouts or mergers of Stouffer's into Kraft. Look it up and you decide. But stop blaming our software! And yes, I remember Stouffer's stovetop stuffing also. That video I created about the Mandela effect and my clients quickly had over 50,000 views on YouTube and started me on my journey as the quantum businessman. I'll provide a link to this video in the description area below. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I speak out about Mandela effects, determining their hidden meanings, the concept of timelines, along with positive timeline insertions and negative timeline insertions. My International Mandela Effect Conference presentation in a few days focuses on the concept of a timeline paradox. Today, I wanted to express that my journey in putting this presentation together took me to places that I didn't realize I was going to go. You could call them revelations. This is because something very special and profound occurred. In fact, I'd been struggling to decide if I should even include this information. Yet today, Father's Day of 2020, I feel that it's appropriate and the timing is perfect to reveal a special experience I had while putting this presentation together. Because of the time I was spending related to the Space Shuttle Challenger and NASA, I had an experience with a deceased astronaut, but not from the Challenger crew, someone else who came to me and wanted his story told. It made me feel emotions I didn't realize I was going to feel. It made me weep. It made me realize that I needed to expose a deeper level of what's going on in our reality, what the global narrative is and how it attempts to control us. I'm going to talk to you about angels and general angels who command legions of angels and archangels and founder beings. I'm going to talk to you about dead man switches and the global narrative. I'm going to tell you about NASA astronaut Gus Grissom. He had the right stuff at the wrong time in history. A true hero because he was brave and spoke out and then paid the price to go against the global narrative. In fact, the spirit of Gus Grissom came to me very strongly. He came to me as a loving father of two boys. He made me weep as I felt the nurturing love of a strong father. A Father's Day message from all fathers who died and were removed from the timeline too early, taken away from their young children who needed them and suffered grief over the loss. May you all find peace and feel the comforting arms of your father. I even feel for a while the frequency between the living and the spirit world are merging. Just as I had this experience in communicating with him, you might experience the same, perhaps with family members that have passed, or perhaps when you see a famous person, they might actually look different. It will be as though you'll have an opportunity to see who is controlling that person. Things we will begin to notice as the frequencies around us become higher and lighter. The types of things I'm going to reveal will be the types of revelations we will hear about more and more. We need to be ready for them. Ready in that we will observe them from a neutral point of view, understanding that there are many sides to truth. We will each use our own critical thinking abilities to determine what is truth. And maybe we can even have a good-natured laugh and sense of humor about them. I started off this presentation with singing a song for kids. By the time we're finished, you're going to be more grown in your understanding of how this reality works. Let's talk about NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, which was established in 1958. I first must admit that as a young boy and teenager and into my adult life, I absolutely loved NASA and anything related to space travel, watching Star Trek reruns over and over, you name it. My bedroom wall was covered in photos that I cut out of magazines about the Apollo moon mission, Saturn rocket engines, astronauts doing spacewalks, etc. I remember my parents saying, "Wow, Chris, you really like outer space." I remember going through a lot of Scotch tape to attach all those pictures to my walls. I would stare at them and dream about visiting the stars. I would build model rockets and launch them. You simply could not believe my joy when I would get the Estes model rocket catalog in the mail. It was total bliss. I memorized every page. You might say NASA, Star Wars, and watching Star Trek repeats were among my first true loves. Talking about Star Trek, did you know that Captain Kirk never said, "Beam me up, Scotty"? Now, as someone who watched the original Star Trek repeats of each episode at least 25 times each, I know for a fact in my old timeline, he absolutely said that exact phrase.
Fascinating.
It's like Darth Vader no longer saying, "Luke, I'm your father."
No, I am your father.
It's like Ricky Ricardo on the I Love Lucy show never saying, "Lucy, you've got some splaining to do." He never said that phrase. It's like the famous Burns and Allen show where at the end George Burns would say, "Say goodnight, Gracie," and she would say, "Goodnight, Gracie."
Let's say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night.
Good night. I said say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night.
Good night.
So I said, well, flip a coin, and if it comes out heads, have your hair dyed.
And if it comes out tails, say goodnight, Gracie.
But she never said that on any episode, ever. It's like the Lone Ranger saying, "Hi-yo, Silver," instead of "Hi-ho, Silver."
Hi-yo, Silver!
I watched all those old repeats. He never said "Hi-yo." It was always "Hi-ho, Silver." It's like Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady saying the famous phrase, "The rain of Spain falls mainly on the plain." Now she says,
"The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain."
now it's "The rain of Spain stays mainly in the plain." From falls to stays and in the plain instead of on the plain, that just doesn't even make any sense. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator saying, "I'll be back," with that thick Austrian accent. Listen to how he says it now.
I'll be back.
What happened to that thick Austrian accent we remember? When he says it the way it is now in the Terminator movie, who cares? It doesn't have the charisma behind it to be the big pop culture phrase we would all imitate, at least me. What about Tank Man, the unidentified Chinese man who stood in front of a column of tanks leaving Tiananmen Square on June 5th, 1989, the day after the Chinese military had suppressed the Tiananmen Square protests by force. I remember when this film was smuggled out of China and watched Tank Man got killed by the tank. It ran him over. It crushed him. It caused a revolution in China and showed the world that one man could make a difference. China became a democracy in that timeline. After riots and protests for weeks, China formed a constitution like the United States. It allowed voting by its people. But now, in this timeline, Tank Man is not killed. He just plays chicken with the tank, jumps on top. I think he exchanges a recipe with the tank driver. Then he goes home. Who cares? That just doesn't have any impact. By the way, the Chinese military and time travel is all over this Mandela effect. Blaming these pop culture and historical changes as group misrememberings, confabulations, or Alzheimer's are just getting too ridiculous to accept. Come on, the Mandela effect is real! Let's go to 1962, back to the roots of the United States mission to the moon. In Houston, Texas, on September 12th, 1962, JFK gave his famous speech.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
About a year later, JFK was assassinated. Despite our nation's shock and sadness, Americans more than ever wanted to see JFK's dream of going to the moon before the end of that decade realized. Especially the youth of America, and of course our political system, wanted to one-up the Russians and get to the moon first. The Russians had already beaten the United States in so many ways. Number one, in 1959, the Soviet Union launched Luna 2, the first spacecraft to successfully reach the moon. 2, in 1961, the Soviet Union sent the first man into space. Number 3, in 1963, Soviet cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova became the first woman in space. She spent almost 3 days in space and orbited the Earth 48 times. The United States was not going to be number 2 in getting a man to the moon. And now, I introduce you to our hero and father of 2 boys, astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom, who went by the name Gus. Gus Grissom. Who's that? Gus Grissom was the astronaut chosen to be the first man to walk on the moon for the Apollo mission. Not Neil Armstrong, Gus Grissom. Gus Grissom was a very special person. He was known for his courage, his bravery serving his country in the Air Force during the Korean War, his intelligence, being cool under pressure, his love for his family, and always telling the truth. He always told the truth, no matter what. That was his reputation. Gus Grissom was among the 7 astronauts featured in the movie The Right Stuff. He also liked having a little fun from time to time. He'd buzz his town Sunday mornings.
He used to buzz the town of Mitchell, and you'd be lying there in bed some Sunday morning fairly early, and all at once there'd be this big roar. And it just scared the daylights out of you because you didn't know what it was. And it was Gus buzzing the town of Mitchell, and some of the townspeople didn't appreciate it too much, but it was kind of fun.
How could you not love this guy? Gus Grissom and the other astronauts were known to have their disagreements with the Nazi German rocket engineers and scientists, many of whom had committed war crimes.
Nazi scientists, some of them tied to war crimes including horrific concentration camp experiments, brought to the U.S. in a secret program to advance American security interests during the Cold War. It sounds like the plot of a film drama, but it actually happened, and on a large scale. The story is told in the new book, Operation Paperclip. Author and journalist Annie Jacobson joins us now. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
So these were top scientists in the German war effort, sought out by the U.S. military as the war was coming to an end.
That's right. These were Hitler's top weapons makers, and Operation Paperclip became a classified military program to bring them to the United States. It also had a public face, so there was, on the one hand, the truth about the program kept secret, and on the other hand, the idea that we'll tell the public that these are the good Germans.
And the good Germans, but they were dedicated Nazis, the ones you write about. We should say there are many, 1,600 in all, right?
Yes.
Oh, did you think I was going to leave the Nazis out of this? You can do your own research related to the Nazi involvement with the United States space program by Googling terms such as Project Paperclip. By the way, there is a new Nazi flag trying to cement itself into this timeline. This new symbolism in our timeline is an attempt to gain power from the sun. You can see the swastika surrounded by sun symbology. The sun represents power. It is yellow, just as the solar plexus chakra is yellow and represents power. I believe that this attempt will be unsuccessful. But for myself and many others, this new flag is a Mandela effect. Back to Gus Grissom and the Nazis at NASA. I'm going to show you a clip from the Right Stuff movie, which shows the documented disagreements between the Nazi scientists and Gus Grissom. Remember the discussion about the hatch of the spacecraft, because it will come up again. The concept of an escape hatch in our holographic reality or dream also has a deep symbolism. Are we free to escape? Or are we locked in? Will we be killed if we even try to escape?
Take it easy with that.
Where are you planning on putting a window?
Window? There's no window.
No window. What about the hatch?
The hatch.
Yeah, the hatch. We need a hatch with explosive bolts that we can open ourselves.
I think there is something you do not understand. This is the final form of the capsule. No hatch.
What would happen if the automatic controls went out?
Backups, checks, etc. This would not happen.
I said, what would happen if it did?
Pilot would have to fly it back.
This is the way it is.
You know, I wonder how the press is going to feel about this.
Press. What does the press have to say about this?
Yeah, what does they have to say about this?
Well, do you boys know what makes this bird go up? Funding makes this bird go up.
That's right. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers.
And, press over there.
Hey, over here!
They all want to see Buck Rogers, and that's us. Buck Rogers.
You see, those fellas over there, they've been making us out as the 7 finest and bravest pilots in all America. And if a story were to come out in the press that we were not being allowed to fly as pilots...
We want a window. Yeah, there could maybe be, in future capsules, be a window or... Here.
No, that's where the hatch with explosive bolts goes.
The hatch with the explosive... Yeah, there could be a hatch with explosive bolts on the capsule.
That is a spacecraft, sir. We do not refer to it as a capsule.
The Nazis had anti-gravity technology since the 1930s. You can investigate the Nazi Hanabu aircraft and World War II Foo Fighters for your own investigation. It's so popular and well known, you can even buy a model kit to make a replica yourself. When one puts all the information together, you can begin to understand why the global narrative wanted to keep the world thinking that prehistoric dinosaur rocket technology was the only way to space. Think about it. It's been almost 100 years since we've had prehistoric dinosaur rocket engines as the only way told to us publicly as the way to get to space. We've had no progress. Does that even make any sense? The same with jet airplanes. Just the pollution caused by jet aircraft is enough reason to retire them. But why does not anyone talk about that? And rocket engines are scary. Look at what was happening throughout the 1960s. I like that sound of the cork popping out of the champagne bottle at the end. What message is it sending with all these rockets exploding? It sends the message that it's scary and difficult to get to space. It's safe to just stay down here on the ground. Do you think that our star family out there are flying around in dinosaur rocket engines? I don't think so. Now, fast forward ahead to January 1967, and we have a problem. At this time, Gus Grissom was selected to be the first man to walk on the moon. The deadline where JFK promised the world the United States would land on the moon was less than 3 years away, and NASA was experiencing all kinds of technical difficulties with its spacecraft. Grissom and his fellow astronauts were so upset about safety and other serious technical issues, they took a photo of themselves praying for their lives in front of a model of the space capsule and sent it to the head of NASA. Gus Grissom was the most popular of the astronauts and the most outspoken critic of the space program. As an officer in the United States Air Force, Gus Grissom also took an oath to his country, as do all airmen, which states that they solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, so help me God. On January 22nd, 1967, Grissom held an unauthorized, impromptu press conference criticizing the space program, criticizing NASA. He said that it would take at least another 10 years to even contemplate going to the moon. Let me repeat that. He said that it would take at least another 10 years to even contemplate going to the moon. He was severely rebuked by NASA for holding that press conference. You can imagine how he riled up the Nazi scientists within NASA who had another agenda. He then took a lemon and hung it outside the capsule to prove his point. He referred to the capsule as a bucket of screws. Grissom was a problem for NASA and had to be dealt with. NASA needed him off the timeline, and at that point, a negative timeline insertion was created. If you remember from my previous videos, I talk about the concept of a negative timeline insertion. An example of that would be when a historical event was inserted into our holographic reality, such as the Mandela effects of the Nazi U-boat attacks against the sinking of an oil tanker right in New York City Harbor in 1941, or 5,000 people killed by Nazi U-boat attack off the New England and East Coast of the United States in 1941. In the Gulf of Mexico, there were at least 24 U-boats off the coast of Texas in 1941 that sank at least 70 oil tankers. The joke was that there were so many U-boats in the Gulf of Mexico, it was surprising they didn't torpedo each other. Events like these, which are historical records, yet most people who know World War II history have never heard of. These are clear Mandela effects of a negative timeline insertion nature. What was the negative timeline insertion regarding Gus Grissom? It was to have Grissom die 6 years before in 1961. That would eliminate all of Grissom's outspoken concerns about NASA in the timeline. On July 21st, 1961, in the Mercury Redstone project, Gus Grissom became the second American in space. When his space capsule, which he named the Liberty Bell 7, splashed down into the Atlantic Ocean, everything that could go wrong went wrong. As you watch this next clip, remember how Gus criticized the hatch design to the Nazi scientists.
Where are you planning on putting a window? Window? There's no window.
No window. What about the hatch?
The hatch?
Yeah, the hatch. We need a hatch with explosive bolts that we can open ourselves.
I think there's something you do not understand. This is the final form of the capsule. No hatch.
At 12,000 feet, the main chute deployed, and Liberty Bell landed safely in the Atlantic Ocean. From launch to splashdown, the 15-minute flight was an unqualified success.
But after splashdown, it seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Gus.
Gus bobbed up and down in the sealed spacecraft, recording switch positions in his log as he waited for the recovery helicopters to arrive.
So he was sitting there when he heard a dull thud and saw the hatch skip off across the water. And immediately, of course, water started gushing into the spacecraft. Gus said he never moved as fast as he had in his life in getting out of the Liberty Bell, and it immediately began sinking under the waves. The recovery helicopter managed to hook on to Liberty Bell 7 and actually started pulling it out of the water. But unfortunately for the helicopter pilot, he received a warning light on his engine panel that there was going to be an engine failure on his helicopter, and so he had to cut loose the Liberty Bell 7 and it sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. While all this was going on, Gus was treading water and sinking lower and lower under the waves. Waves would break over him. He swallowed a lot of seawater.
He had closed his neck dam on the suit, but he had forgotten to close one of the valves on the bottom of the suit. So he was taking on water, and he said it's getting harder and harder to stay afloat. And he kept waving to the helicopters, and they kept thinking he's okay, and he wasn't.
He was about ready to drown. He was wondering, I'm going to sink below the waves in front of all these people.
At that point, it didn't look like Gus was going to make it. The negative timeline insertion of the hatch on Liberty Bell 7 blowing prematurely looked like it was going to be successful to remove Gus from the timeline. For a moment now, I want to pause and talk about who Gus Grissom really was. Who was the spirit or soul or higher consciousness of Gus Grissom? The answer is that Gus was an angel with high ranking, considered a general angel, an angel one level below an archangel, a general who commanded legions of angels, a general soldier angel who is a manager of the spirit of the moon. I give him the code name Moon Angel. He was also on one of the teams of founders of ancient Egypt after the fall of Atlantis. Did you know that Luxor in Egypt was a huge spaceport during the age of Atlantis? Bet you didn't think I was going to reveal that. You might be thinking, how does the quantum businessman know these things? This information can be tracked back in Earth's database known as the Akashic Records. The Wi-Fi of our body connects to Earth's field via biophotons to access memories and information stored in light. It's part of our holographic reality where everything that happens is recorded. In fact, we all have our own Akashic records embedded in the DNA of our skeletal system. It is our birthright and legacy to know and access this information. In the future, many people will be able to do this, so this information I am presenting will be verified. What happened next to Gus Grissom? The positive player inserts a positive timeline insertion, and a second helicopter arrives, which rescues Gus just before drowning. Gus had some guardian angels looking after him that day. The negative timeline insertion failed, and Gus survived. With this negative timeline insertion not being successful in eliminating Gus from the timeline, another tactic was used. He was to become a ritual fire sacrifice, a sacrifice in fire to a negative alien god to gain favor for the space program at NASA. What do I mean? On January 27th, 1967, just 5 days after Gus held the impromptu press conference about NASA needing at least another 10 years to even contemplate getting to the moon, there was a simulated launch in preparation for an actual lunar flight for the Apollo mission. During a routine test at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, an electrical fire swept through the command module, killing all 3 astronauts aboard: Gus Grissom, Edward H. White II, and Roger B. Chaffee. It was the first fatal accident in the history of the United States space program. Gus Grissom was 40. Remember the hatch door? It appears that the Nazi scientists at NASA decided to make the hatch difficult to open for the Apollo mission. Because the hatch door was difficult to open and it didn't have the capability to explode off its hinges in case of emergency, like Gus Grissom and the Right Stuff astronauts had specifically asked for years ago in 1961, it prevented them from escaping. The symbolism of the escape hatch is also very important. An escape hatch is an emergency exit from an enclosed space. It represents freedom, freedom to leave this planet. But with an escape hatch that won't open when it's needed, what lesson is the global narrative trying to teach us? Is the global narrative trying to teach us to stay on the ground? It's safer here than off planet. It's dangerous to try to leave. Humans must not even try to open a hatch. All of this is something to think about.
We haven't talked yet. How's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We need another minute to get it sorted.
How are we gonna get to the moon if we can't talk between 3 buildings? They can't hear a thing you're saying. Jesus Christ.
Say again?
I said, how are we gonna get to the moon if we can't talk between 2 or 3 buildings? You tell them, Gus. You tell them. Make your mouth shit.
I got a surge in the AC bus 2 voltage. Try resetting the meter. You getting this, Gus?
Raj, you picking anything up on the dials? Hey, we got fire in the cockpit.
Hey, we got a bad fire!
What about the hatch?
The hatch?
Yeah, the hatch. We need a hatch with explosive bolts that we can open ourselves.
It's been 50 years, and no other country besides the United States has ever claimed to send someone to the moon. Does that make sense? Does the global narrative want humans to stay locked in their cages? After the tragedy of the astronauts' deaths, multiple investigations followed. The lead investigator, Thomas Barron, reported being harassed after an initial subcommittee hearing. A week later, and before he could submit his 500-page report into the accident, Thomas Barron, his wife, and stepdaughter were found dead after being hit by a train in their car. It was ruled an accident. His detailed 500-page report was never found. Sound suspicious? I want to say something very personal now. When I was creating this presentation, I clearly felt the spirit of Gus Grissom. He came to me as a grieving father. I'm not one to talk to dead people. In fact, in the past, whenever I would find that starting to happen, I would just push that away, like, don't do that. But this was different. He communicated with me, and I felt the love that he had for his 2 boys. I deeply felt the grief of a father who was taken from this reality before he could raise his sons. I felt how deeply he wanted to teach them how to hunt and to fish and to grow up to be men, and how to respect women and how to raise their own families, how to make a difference. As a father myself, I completely understand the extreme grief and overwhelming sadness that comes when a father is taken off the timeline before his children is overwhelming. I hugged myself. I imagined it was Gus and sent him and his boys healing thoughts and prayers. If you know any fathers or mothers that died when their children were young, you can think about them and give them and their family a hug and send healing thoughts and prayers. Their spirit will feel it and will help heal them and heal the grief that their family felt when trying to deal with that loss. And now, I want to introduce you to the concept of a dead man switch, because Gus had a big one. Most powerful beings have one, even if their 3D consciousness is not aware of it. What is a dead man switch? A dead man switch is defined as a switch that is designed to be activated if the human operator becomes incapacitated, such as through death, loss of consciousness, or being bodily removed from control. The dead man switch that Gus enacted was a positive chess move. In the event of his death, events would lead to the collapse of the grid of entanglement between NASA and the Nazi agenda that was brought into the United States by Project Paperclip. Thank you, Gus, for that positive chess move. After his death, events unfolded which ended the Nazi influence over NASA. You know how passionate Gus Grissom was that it would be at least another 10 years before even contemplating that we would go to the moon. And then 2 years later, we've landed on the moon? Does that make sense? What about the conspiracy theory that the famous moonwalk took place on a movie soundstage? You can at least understand that the concept was possible because of all the technical difficulties, and time was running out.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
And if it was even suggested that the moonwalk would be made on a movie set, I guarantee you that Gus Grissom, the man originally chosen to be the first man on the moon, the man whose reputation was to always tell the truth, the Air Force pilot who would buzz his town on Sunday mornings, would have had nothing to do with that. For myself personally, I never saw this coming when putting this presentation together. I always had a deep reverence for NASA. My mind would not let me think anything contrary to what I believed since a young age about the moon landing in 1969. This became a lesson for me about revelations. Revelations can sometimes be uncomfortable as our belief systems are challenged. The spirit of Gus Grissom directed me in an uncomfortable direction, a direction of which up until now has been hidden in what I would call a hairball of black magic and chess moves forward and backward in time, both negative and positive, a very messy hairball which wouldn't allow the truth to be exposed. But we are now living in the age of the Great Awakening. As our frequency and the frequency of our planet rises, we can begin to see things from a higher perspective. If we can find the right thread and pull it, the entire hairball can untangle. Now, I'm no aeronautical engineer, but Gus was enthusiastic and flowing information to me related to the docking of the command module named Columbia and the lunar module named Eagle. Honestly, whether the first moonwalk was real or fake, I don't want to get involved with that today. Things like this will naturally sort themselves out as we further enter the age of the Great Awakening. Though I think you can at least see a reason to raise an eyebrow at the situation. It's really one of three things. Number one, the moonwalk and the entire Apollo 11 mission is 100% true and factual, or it's 100% false and deceptive, or three, it's somewhere in between. In fact, you probably fall into one of those three categories as far as your belief system is now. From everything you've learned today, there really are two lessons I'd like you to be aware of. Lesson number one, revelations can be uncomfortable as our lifelong belief systems can be challenged, or as they say, the truth can hurt. Prepare yourselves for that. Lesson number two, the love of a father, a strong father, a nurturing father of his children, can transcend time and space. Is that the kind of father you want to be? And I'll add one more thing. Laughter! No matter what gets revealed to us in the future, Can we somehow find a way to forgive, to heal, to laugh? Because now I'm gonna challenge you to smile. With the help of James Bond, played by Sean Connery in the movie Diamonds Are Forever, released in 1971, no matter what your belief system is, can this make you smile?
There he is, behind the rock. Come on!
What the hell is this, amateur night? Stop him, Harry. Get him off that machine, that isn't a toy. Go to that moon bucket.
It's gone berserk.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? Hey!
Thank you, Sean Connery, for that moment of smiles. And now you know why I'm wearing my James Bond suit. What do I believe about man visiting the moon? I believe that ancient civilizations such as Atlantis or the Vimana of India were capable of space travel and going to the moon at least 10,000 years ago, and it wasn't with rocket engines. I believe that the spirit of Gus Grissom came to me, and I am honored I could speak out in his behalf, even though he was a bit enthusiastic at times. And I am honored to tell his special story as a father on Father's Day. Are you ready for another revelation? Stay tuned because we are just getting to the good stuff. Next, what happens when a timeline paradox is created? I hope you join me in a couple of days for my presentation about a timeline paradox. Don't worry, I'll be back. Happy Father's Day, everyone. And who said the quantum businessman was just about business?
And he'll keep his brother's memory alive of all that he accomplished and who he was in a short lifetime.
I think Gus would probably say it's about damn time that we got an American spacecraft with man from American astronauts in it. I think it's a matter of national pride that we have things that we can look to and people that are heroes. We don't have so many heroes anymore, and we need those.